Welcome back to ACX University. This is Marketing with the ACX-Perts, and I'm Scott.
And I'm Hannah.
And we are here today with part 2 of our ACX-Perts Marketing Roadmap. And in part 1, we covered the pre-production phase of your audiobook publishing journey. All of the things that you can do to set yourself up for marketing success before you even get into production. Today, in part 2, we're going to cover in production.
Yep.
All the things you can do to actually market and to set yourself up for success when your audiobook comes out to retail, because that will be part 3 of this series.
Yep.
On sale, on retail, all the things you do when you make your big push now that your audiobook is actually on sale. So Hannah, what is our first item? What's the first thing that we can be thinking about as we get into the production phase? We've cast our producer, they're ready to start making audio for us as the author publisher. Where are we thinking about marketing right now?
Well, if you've done all the homework that we gave you in part 1, you've cast and created a great relationship with your narrator, and that's the place to start once your audiobook gets into production. We talked a little bit previously about having a good conversation with your producer about what your expectations are for marketing, and particularly for those of you who choose the royalty share and royalty share plus options. Hopefully your narrator is going to be an active participant in promoting the audiobook because they've got skin in the game too. So at this stage, it's a really important point to have a conversation about what you're hoping to get out of your marketing relationship. That can be as simple as interviews for your newsletter or interviews for your blog, to more complicated behind-the-scenes footage, behind-the-scenes audio, providing audio along the way for your fans, which we'll talk a little bit more about, to things like participating in live streams with you. There are all sorts of ways that you can partner with your narrator, but now, while the book is starting to be recorded, while you're doing that 15-minute sample, now's the time to have that conversation about what you're hoping they will add to your marketing plan.
Yeah, I think the last thing you want is, it's just sort of like a human kindness thing. The last thing you want is to be surprising your narrator during production while they're supposed to be focusing on your book with these, peppering them with asks, and maybe they're not comfortable with it. And you're distracting them from the production with something they might not even be into. So this is really the stage when you want to find out what marketing partner you have here, what level of comfortability they have, and just to set the expectations so that you're really having a good, productive partnership on both the production side as well as the marketing side.
Now, I will say there are limits to what you can ask a producer to do. So don't, ask them to, your narrator is not your video editor. They are not your graphic designer. They are not your copywriter. All of those things are things that you would pay a service provider to do. So if that's the level of assistance that you need, either find someone other than your narrator to do it, or talk about compensating your narrator with a little bit of additional money. If you're doing royalty share plus, or if you're doing pay for production, you would pay a copy editor, graphic designer, video editor for their time. So just because someone has those skills, make sure you're compensating them fairly if that's the level of intensity that they're going to bring into your production.
Yeah, and I think later in this episode, we'll get to some of the nitty-gritty about some really fun ideas for what your producer can do to provide you with some extra content to help you market your book. And along the way, let's remember to sort of help our audience understand what's a reasonable ask and what might be going a little bit above and beyond, what might be worthy of some extra compensation.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So let's start by talking about the most valuable piece of asset that you have at this point, because you don't have a finished audiobook to promote, but you do have some audio files. What can a rights holder expect at this stage?
Yeah, so when you initially get into production, for those that might be ACX newbies, we've built in something called the 15-minute checkpoint. This is at the opening stages of production, rather than just going off and producing the entire audiobook. The rights holder has a chance to hear roughly 15 minutes of the book and just make sure everything is right. The tone, the general pacing, character voices, and sort of acting choices in that way. The rights holder and the producer can then sort of have a little back and forth, collaborate on what they think, if everybody's on the same page, before moving forward with the full production. So what does that have to do with marketing your audiobook?
Well, I think the biggest opportunity here, there are a lot of misconceptions about the 15-minute checkpoint, that you have to do just the first 15 minutes of the book. But like Scott said, really what you're hammering down is tone and pacing, accents, pronunciations. So here's another marketing opportunity that you might not have thought of, and that is to have your fans choose what scenes they're most excited to hear in audio, and then have your narrator choose that as the selection for the 15-minute sample. So go to Facebook, go to Twitter, wherever your audience is, and say, what are you most looking forward to hearing out of my finished audiobook?
And again, like we said in the previous episode, it's another little opportunity for some market research. You learn from your fans what scenes they were the most passionate about. Maybe that informs your writing for future books in the series or future books you put out. But again, it can help you shape and craft that 15-minute sample, which needn't be one long 15-minute scene.
That's
and in
true.
fact, for your book, it might be appropriate to have a short scene that includes some romance, if that's the type of book you're writing, maybe some action, if that's also in the book, maybe
Dialogue.
some really heavy dialogue, and maybe some, just narration of just explanatory text. Whatever's right for your book, try to mix in a little bit of all of it, A, so that you get a sense of what your producer's gonna sound like throughout the entire book, but B, so that when we get around to the point where you can turn around later and share that 15-minute sample with your fans, it's almost like a little bit of a sneak preview. And I know Hannah's big on talking about sort of like the movie marketing plan aspect, the way Hollywood and TV markets their content. It can be a little bit of a, what do you call it, like a pre-release trailer?
Yes, a
something
teaser
along
trailer.
those lines. Yeah.
So I'm always saying at this stage in your audiobook marketing, you have so many opportunities to treat this like a film release. And if you think about how a movie promotes itself, as soon as it goes into production or as soon as they have casting announcements, the directors make casting announcements. They give interviews to magazines about the upcoming film. They go to Comic-Con and talk about the movie that's coming. They release a teaser trailer that's not even the trailer.
Right.
Then there's a trailer. Look, all of these are things that are happening while the movie is still in production, and each one of these is a marketing opportunity that drives hype for the finished product. So you should treat the audiobook in the same way. Each one of these is an opportunity to market. So when you have, and I really like that idea about getting like multiple short scenes of your book as your audiobook, because I think there's an opportunity for a trailer there too. What do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. You can then take that audio and turn it around either on SoundCloud or create a YouTube trailer, which might sound daunting, but with a service like artwork.fm,
Love that.
can actually be as easy as just maybe your book cover, your audiobook cover, and some of the audio under it. Maybe it's your actor's headshot as well. Maybe it's a logo from the book or the colors that make up your branding. You can put all that together really easily, and it's just another way to feed that content beast, to start highlighting audio, which is the magic part of this whole production. It's what sets it apart from your other formats. And it really just will get those fans bought in nice and early.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I want to circle back to the great point you made about sort of the movie and TV marketing overall plan, right? And I think if you are an author, rights holder that is unsure about marketing, just doesn't know, well, how do I even do this? How do I market my audiobook? How do I do it right? Maybe think about one of your favorite movies, or just think about a movie that was unbelievably successful. Like you saw it everywhere, it grossed billions at the box office. Do a little bit of Googling and research. Try to piece together what their marketing plan was. Put the steps together, lay them out in a document that makes sense for you, and try to follow that on your own in a way that works for your audiobook. I'm not going to tell you that you have the budget to go get a billboard on Sunset. Yeah, but find the little ways to emulate the big ways that these major studios with these $1 million marketing budgets and marketing consultants learn from them. That's a free way to learn about it.
Yeah, one of my favorite narrators, Karen Cummins, says, nobody falls on the mountaintop, success leaves tracks. Nobody falls on the mountaintop. There are patterns out there. There are plans out there that you can copy. There are so many different ways that you can do this without having to reinvent the wheel. And I would absolutely not encourage you to reinvent the wheel. Find someone you admire, someone who's doing it well, and absolutely go and follow that same pattern for your own efforts.
Couldn't agree more.
So, what else can we do at this stage while the audiobook is still in production?
So, Audible listeners love behind-the-scenes content, and I think a lot of people that consume media love to get sort of a peek behind the curtain. The final product is always so polished and finished, and it looks or sounds so beautiful, but I think fans know that it didn't start out that way. It took a lot of work to get there. So ways that you can bring them into that process, again, involve your producer, have them send you some behind the scenes footage, whether that's a picture of them in their studio, whether that's a little video of them. Again, maybe just on their iPhone is the best way to do it, or your Android if you're an Android person.
Sure.
Some behind the scenes of them doing a pivotal line. Or maybe even some bloopers if it's like a really hard line that they just kept stumbling over.
Maybe they got the giggles one day.
Yeah, maybe they got, if it's a really sexy scene, maybe it took them a few times to sort of like get the sillies out or something. If that's something your producer is comfortable with, and again, I'm reminded of the note that I made for ourselves earlier in the episode, get yourself some behind the scenes audio on your cell phone, some behind the scenes video on your cell phone. Fairly reasonable ask, I think. Capture all this footage and dump it into QuickTime and do all these edits and all these star wipes and additional sound design. That's a little more than just a quick thing your producer might want to throw in.
Yeah.
That's where you might want to consider compensating them or just asking them for footage and then having your own video editor do it.
But what's really free is it's a piece of marketing that I think you have to be really vulnerable for, but it's really exciting, is taking your own behind the scenes video. So the first time you hear your audiobook, if you get those files, you get that notice from ACX that your files are ready to be listened to, maybe take a minute before you listen to them, set up your camera on selfie mode and start recording yourself and record yourself listening to your audiobook for the first time. I talked to so many folks who listen to their audiobooks and they say, who wrote this?
They get chills.
They get chills. It's so exciting. And your reaction, hopefully it's a great one, is a really great way to bring your fans behind the process, get them excited for it by showing them how you're excited for your audiobook production.
Yeah, reaction videos are their own genre unto itself, and it's just a great way, as Hannah said, to share your excitement. And the last one that I have on this little card here, and I'm sure there's more beyond just this card, this is a great time while you're in production to interview your producer, either over the phone or over email, or include them in a Facebook Live. Again, that's sort of like a next level, more time intensive way to do it, but just get some of their feedback about what they think about your book, how the production is going for them, what acting choices they're making, what's inspiring them as they go through this book. It's just another great way to share some of the process with your fans, and I always like to say that excitement is contagious. So the more you show yourself being excited, the more you show your producer being excited, the more your fans are going to pick up that excitement and just be excited themselves, hopefully.
It's true. I don't think we could leave this episode without talking about more homework, and you guys are going to kill me for giving you even more homework to do before you get the audiobook launched. But again, this is past you setting future you up for success. So creating content now for later. Now is the time to start planning and creating what social posts you're going to make when your audiobook actually goes to market. So Scott, what are some of the things that we should be thinking about in terms of planning content ahead of time?
I think the first thing to be thinking about is how important it is to plan that content ahead of time. Again, you're a busy author, you're a busy publisher, you're writing, you're marketing, you're publishing and getting audiobooks produced. When that audiobook day comes, when that launch day comes, I'm imagining you don't have 48 hours to just completely set aside all those other tasks and focus explicitly on marketing. This is where you can set yourself up for success. Have a marketing calendar, so do a little bit of planning around. Hannah is a huge calendar fan. Not that I'm not, you're the big calendar fan on the team. So plan out, sort of lay out what your marketing is going to look like once the audiobook launches. Figure out what all those tiles are going to be and where they're going to go. Use some scheduling software, whether that's built into your social media platform of choice, your blog of choice, your newsletter platform, or there are other third-party solutions like Hootsuite is one that I know that allows you to, across social media channels, schedule posts. There's definitely, it doesn't all have to be in the moment, and in fact, a lot of it shouldn't be in the moment. You're going to have so much to do around launch time. Set yourself up for success with just some pre-planning.
Yeah, absolutely. And now's the time, so speaking of calendars, now's the time to get on the calendars for your friends and colleagues. So if you are planning on reaching out to reviewers, if you're planning on reaching out to other authors in your genre, authors that you're friends with, now's the time to get on their calendar and tell them, I've got an audiobook, it's in final recording, I'm expecting the audiobook should be going on sale in the next month or two. Now's the time to get on their editorial schedule and figure out, can you review my book? Will you be available to review my book? Will you be available to blurb my audiobook? All these things. So now's the time to send those emails out and get on their calendars. I don't want you springing this on people at the last minute, because it's more likely they're going to say no.
Yeah, and it's rude also. You're sort of you want to be a good citizen in the business world that you're living in, because it's always going to help you out. Because you know what, at times you will have that last minute ask. You will have a need, and if it's the 30th time that you've come to somebody with that last minute ask, they're not going to be quite as willing to help you out. But yeah, lay yourself the groundwork. Get yourself in the queue nice and early, whether it's with reviewers or whether it's with other people that you want to help you out. We just keep coming back to this point. It's just past you setting future you up for success.
Well, and let's talk about reviewers for a second, because working with other other authors to promote, that's very, very common. But when you're approaching audiobook reviewers, you kind of have to bring a higher level of professionalism, I think is what I'm trying to say. So you want to come up with a pitch for them. You want to come up with a blurb, maybe an audio sample, something compelling about your book. Scott, how can you put together a compelling pitch that reviewers are going to prioritize your book for?
Well, the first thing I would say is we've covered this in the episode, The Elements of a Well-Reviewed Audiobook. So if you want to see much more about that, I would highly suggest you go check that out. But my biggest tip for that is your compelling audiobook blurb should feature a little bit about the book itself, about the story, about the genre, what makes that interesting, but especially about the audio. An audiobook reviewer is not a book reviewer. They are specifically focusing on audio, and it's very important to let them know in what way, whether it's the casting choice you've made, whether it's, if the producer is including sound design or music, whether it's a personal connection that the producer has to the material in some way. What is it about the audio that elevates the story? That's what I always hear from reviewers they're really focusing on. How does the audio elevate the story?
And I love, there's a blog called Query Shark. It's a blog for people who are seeking to pitch literary agents. But what Query Shark teaches you to do is how to write a really compelling pitch for your book that just grabs the reader in a couple of sentences. So go check out the Query Shark blog and see how other authors are taking their query letters and shaping them into a really compelling pitch that people just can't turn down. You might not be pitching agents with your audiobook, but you can use the same strategies to pitch audiobook reviewers. So go check out Query Shark and really hone that pitch into something that's really compelling that everyone will say yes to.
So with the idea of pitching future things in mind, I'm going to pitch that you make sure you watch the next episode in this series, which is going to be when all of this comes to fruition, when all of the work that we've talked about so far, it's launch day, your audiobook is out in the world, and that groundswell is going to happen, and you're going to get tons of sales and tons of reviews and have a really successful marketing campaign. But before you check out the next episode, let's just go over the 3 top things we covered in this episode, just so you don't forget them.
Yeah, I hope we've dispelled any kind of myth that there aren't any marketing opportunities at this stage. The first thing that you want to do, though, like we said, is set the expectations with your producer. You're having those conversations about what your marketing plans are and where you might need them to help you out, but you're not asking too much of them, or you're getting their consent before you ask.
Or you're paying them to do a lot, which nobody doesn't like money. That was a weird double negative. Number 2 in our top 3 of this episode, leverage the audio. Audio is what makes this format so cool. It's the whole reason you're producing an audiobook, right? So remember that there are plenty of opportunities throughout the production process, even before your book is out, to leverage the audio, whether it's official audio like the 15-minute checkpoint, whether it's unofficial audio like behind the scenes audio or an audio interview with your producer. Focus on the audio, condition your fans for audio, start showing them the magic of the format.
Yeah, and our last tip is planning. I've got to get my calendar up to date. The more work you do now, the less work you're going to have to do on launch day, or the more thought you can put into launch day and focus on being excited that your audiobook is finally available for sale.
Yeah.
So that's all we've got for today. Stay tuned to the next episode where we're actually going to talk about launch day. It's finally here. You've made it. Stay tuned to the next one. We'll see you next time.